we're here with Olaf Hartong from FalconForce, who probably needs no introduction. But do you want to say a little bit about you, about your history and your background, Olaf?
Oh, sure. Yeah, thanks for having me in the first place.
Pleasure to be
I have
here.
a very diverse history, I guess. So I got a weird road into security. So at first I studied tele and data communications. So that was actually quite hands-on, and it was a microelectronics grade that I studied for. So it was part of it where we had to play with lasers and all kinds of transmitting stuff to.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I even built my own packet radio modems and whatnot. And I got into a sort of a sysadmin job then and some network administration. So I did a lot of firewalls and all the other things. And this was in the time of the I Love You worm and so on. So it's quite a long time ago. Had a lot of fun then. Spent I think 36 hours in the data center trying to get rid of that beast. And then after a while, I figured, well, this desk work is nothing for me. All this office politics. So I quit my job, went to art school, and I studied documentary photography. So
I
did
saw it
that.
in your LinkedIn, actually. I didn't know if it was an actual career or if it was a hobby. That's
It
cool. You
was.
actually
Oh
started
yeah,
with it,
it's more of a sort of forgotten hobby almost by now because it's hard to spend time on it. But I did it for professionally for about 7 to 8 years, so quite a long stint. And then the whole financial crisis happened, and then somewhat like a year after, most of the marketing budgets were either frozen or slimmed down significantly. So
yeah.
I really struggled to survive, and then I got a lucky opportunity at a managed hosting provider as a network admin again. And they didn't have any real security team. So I basically built it there, built their SOC, and then I got hooked and I switched to a consulting job. I did that for a couple of years, built multiple SOCs, did threat hunting, got into incident response, the whole shebang. And then in January of this year, I co-founded FalconForce with a couple of good colleagues and friends.
Look, congratulations. I know that I know how difficult it is to start a business, and it's usually a really lonely experience. So well done, and it's amazing that you guys are doing so well already. That's perfect.
We got bored because of the 8 people, but so far it's been a blessing actually. Yeah, there's so many things that you can discuss amongst peers and like-minded people instead of having to get outside advice all the time. So it's been a good ride so far.
Dude, from our perspective, and I said it before we started recording, we are absolute groupies and fans of the work that you do. It's impressive to see how much you've contributed to the community in a relatively short time frame since if you started in security and anger in 2008 or 2009 to this time. You're one of the leading voices of kind of innovation and delivery in this space. So from our point of view, and I guess for most part of the industry, just thank you, because what you contribute, particularly with Sysmon, for example, and the work you do with MITRE is spectacular. I mean, I don't know any SOC team or threat hunting team or any form of security team that hasn't used Sysmon one way or another to try to get better visibility into their own security posture. So that's absolutely amazing. How did you? I guess more than how did you create it, because I think we all recognize in a SOC we needed better eyes into what's going on in our state. But where are you taking it next? What's the next challenge for Sysmon for you?
It's difficult. I think what I try to create is a sort of usable way of configuring your Sysmon, where I do adore Swift on security once. That is probably also the one that got me started using it, but soon it turned out for me, or it proved to me that it wasn't really easy to maintain, and especially as a consultant, it didn't work out at all. So, and I'm now debating a little bit. So I do have a lot of MITRE taggings in there also for the stuff I include, but that is also causing some blind spots. So at some clients, I actually remove all the includes and only use with excludes, so that it's a lot more telemetry that you get, right? But it's also that there's a trade-off versus with the volume that you want to ingest versus the stuff that you can actually cover in your SOC. So
it's an interesting problem we come across, right? Because we've used it in a lot of customers that don't have proper telemetry from endpoint, for example, and we see it cropping up in a lot of people that don't yet have an EDR but want some of that telemetry available. But then the trade-off is the cost of ingesting all the data that you get from Sysmon into your SIEM, particularly when you're talking about SIEMs. We work with Azure Sentinel in particular, so it's based on how much you ingest, the cost that you ultimately pay to Microsoft. There's a weird trade-off there where people without EDR are actually paying a ton for their ingestion of that data, whereas people with EDR probably paying less for the ingestion and getting, but they have to do that investment
and they get more
to begin
telemetry at the
EDR.
same time, which is
strange.
strange.
So have you come across, I mean, what's the perfect use case these days for you guys in Sysmon, or what are you seeing as the trend of the ones that get the most value of it?
It's broad. I think the first biggest profit is probably if you don't have an EDR, or if you only use EDRs on your endpoints. So what I do see is that people use Sysmon on servers quite a lot, and preferably depending. It doesn't even matter which EDR you have. I love Windows Defender ATP, and I worked with Sentinel One and with a lot of the other bigger ones. But all of them have the same issue as I just described with my Sysmon config, right? So it's all filter based, and even Defender ATP filters out quite a lot of registry keys and other stuff that is actually quite important.
And it's super interesting to see how it behaves, so how a piece of malware behaves.
Exactly, yeah. So ideally you still team them up, because there's quite a nice visibility to be gained from both of them.
Is there a capability, or would there be, so a couple of selfish questions here, would there not be an opportunity for you to tag into something like Defender ATP where you're doing caching of some of that, but you're losing it, almost like you're doing a PCAP of it, but you're not keeping it? And then when you have an incident, you can at least go back 20 minutes, and you might not have all the telemetry, but you will have 20 minutes before a T0 moment of full Sysmon trace. Because if you could time bomb it like that, where you get, well, I always have a time machine of 20 minutes. So from a T0 that Defender detects a piece of malware, for example, we can say as an analyst, go, oh, awesome, I just want snapshot. Give me what happened, everything from 20 minutes to now. And that could be a phenomenal way of recording valuable telemetry that we're currently discarding. Because it's very binary right now. You either keep the whole thing or you lose the whole thing.
Yeah, well, technically that shouldn't be big. That you can already do this. I think from a technical perspective, you can just have a sort of Sysmon log that can only retain, I don't know, an hour or two.
An hour, yeah.
Set the size, or even there's a timeout value that you can set on the event log, and then have an auto investigation on Defender ATP where it ingests all the relevant logs. Or you can schedule that through a Sentinel automation.
Analytic playbook, yeah.
So technically, it's already possible, I think, and this would provide a lot of value. Even if you don't ingest Sysmon, I still would recommend people to install it and have it locally. Yeah. Sure, there are smart defenders that will wipe it, but most of them only delete the security logs for some reason, and they often forget about Sysmon at all. So these kind of things would actually be nice.
So something we were talking about as well before, which we're working with at the moment, is extending from your traditional endpoint on server estate to other things we're trying to get better telemetry from. In our case, for example, we're playing around a lot with IoT and how do you protect IoT? How do you do a SOC for IoT type devices? Do you see yourself extending Sysmon, or do you see the community potentially extending Sysmon to those types of devices and embedding it into things that we haven't normally gotten great telemetry from?
Ooh. Yeah, well, Sysmon is very Microsoft-centric, so that would be a challenge, I guess, for most IoT stuff. So if there's
Azure Sphere or any of those type of IoT.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Why not? Yeah. I've never had the luxury of a client or the environment for that matter to go after it. I'm not sure if you can deploy it yourself even. But this would be super interesting. Yeah, I'd be more than willing to jump on these kind of things, because the Microsoft landscape is of course the biggest attack surface for most companies. However, that is being covered quite well with EDRs and whatnot. But there's a lot of forgotten or new industries that are totally neglected. So I'm also working with a client that is more in the SCADA industry. Okay. But that's also still quite an interesting field. It's most of it is in essence just TCP. So there's a lot to be gained from the network telemetry, and this is yeah, it's a field that has declared dead, yet not dead at the same time. It's still probably one of the most valuable resources that you can get.
Well, we were talking about that the other day, right? So every attack still has to go through the wire at some point, either in or
Exactly.
out. So at some point, the wire is the truth, the ultimate truth. So we have forgotten a little bit about it. It's interesting. We've seen, if you remember a couple of years ago, the world had moved from an attack surface where perimeter was no longer being hit so much because we had enough defensive controls there that it was a waste of investment, and endpoint became the source of most of all compromises, right? Because it was so easy to go compromise a successful phishing campaign, compromise an endpoint, and move from there. Yep. With the advent of better protective mechanisms at endpoint, EDRs and hardenings, Windows operating systems coming much better hardened by default, and all that jazz, we've seen a massive pivot again from actors moving to VPN concentrators and firewalls. The last 12, 18 months have been havoc in the traditional kind of network perimeter devices. So it's interesting that we're going back to a point where network telemetry it probably was always important. I'm not saying it wasn't, but there's a certain amount of relevance and concurrency to paying attention to network telemetry. Is that something you're currently working on?
Yeah, but not with the focus I want to have at it again. So okay. Back at my managed hosting days, people were jokingly calling me Brolaf because of the bro tool, which was my favorite tool at the time. And it's called Zeek now, of course, for reasons which are pretty good, but I still can't get rid of that name. It's just Bro has been around for, I don't know, 2 decades or something. It's like really old, but it's such a powerful tool. And then, yeah, I want to do more with Bro again because it's one of the best telemetry tools on the network that you can get.
Yeah, totally.
And especially if you start augmenting it with a lot of the scripts that you can add to it, then it becomes really powerful, and you probably can compete with some of the bigger names in the industry without the fancy dashboards.
Yeah. Well, wasn't there a time where every IDS in the market was actually just snored with a pretty GUI?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't think that changed.
Exactly. I was going to say it's probably still a true statement. Indeed. So, look, tell me something cool you're working on these days. What is it? What's the one thing that you're doing that's keeping you, or maybe more than one? What's the coolest project that's keeping you excited?
Yeah, I'm still working on my Splunk app, the threat hunting app that I keep on extending.
You should port this to Sentinel. We need your brains in Sentinel. Come on.
Funny question. So actually, one of my good friends, Eduardo, ported, I think 70% of it already to Sentinel, and I'm going on holiday next week. But the week after, I probably start improving it as well because
excellent news.
Sentinel is awesome. It's on the graphical part, it's no competition for Splunk yet. But the capability part definitely is. So there's quite a lot of cool features that we can utilize there. So I definitely want to extend that workbook.
The work Microsoft's done is truly remarkable, starting from scratch to get to where they are. From a capability perspective, as you say, we've been running it now for a couple of years, even before it was public release. And it's coming from a Splunk background myself, I can honestly say the capability is spectacular. And it's good to see it being adopted more in anger now by everybody. And the more it gets support from people like you, I mean, the more it helps build trust in the platform, right? Even though it's new, it's where the true innovation is at the moment. So it's great. It's great that you're pumping into it. That's great.
No, it's and especially in Europe, I think it's immensely popular over the last 6 months. I've seen huge multinationals switch to this and getting rid of all their legacy on-prem stuff. With some pain points, of course. It's a young product, so it has its quirks. But the dedication.
Well, I guess it's the rate of change. One of the things we see it suffer a lot is the rate of change. These things are changing at a speed that it doesn't allow in-house teams to really keep up. How do you? I mean, are we innovating more? Is the security industry now innovating quicker than the attack industry, or are we finally catching up to the point where we're both going maybe in separate directions but keeping up to speed? Or how do you deal with the rate of change at the moment?
Yeah, from a Sentinel perspective, that's super difficult because even your documentation is old after, I don't
What
know, a month
documentation?
if you're lucky. No, your own,
Yeah,
because Microsoft doesn't document yet, or very limited.
I
So
know.
you have to rely on Medium as your single source of truth at the moment. But even the internal people that have a documentation for some onboarding or some other stuff, and then the interface is completely different the next month, which is sometimes annoying. Most of it is I mean, it's intuitive enough to be able to fix it for most people, but
Well, we struggle particularly when Microsoft changes the event
yeah,
IDs, effectively the APIs and the actual names of the log
schema.
stores.
Yeah.
The schema, it drives you potty because you have your whole hunts ready to go in certain templates, and then you have your GitHub reps ready to go when you need
And
to
it's
look for
bound
something.
to
Suddenly,
happen
it all
again.
changes. I mean, it's always for a good reason. I've noticed that they are driving for an improvement that is amazing, but you can also see the parallel production of all the products where the Defender ATP runs in one direction, Azure Security Center in another, MCAS in another, Sentinel in another, and they're trying to make them kind of meet in the middle, but they're not quite there all the time. So is that more challenging for you at the moment than keeping up with what the actors are doing, what the threat actors are doing on the outside?
No, that will be a bad thing, right? Because then you're in trying to keep track of your own tools and don't have the outside focus. I think I'm quite doing well on that end. So I'm trying to
Good.
watch as much what is out there, but that's also, it's difficult because there's a lot of people that are shouting PowerShell is dead, for instance. And then a couple of days ago, I forgot who published it. I think it was one of the AV vendors or EDR vendors that said, okay, PowerShell has seen a significant increase of 80% over the last couple of months. So it depends also on the target, I guess, and filtering all out that noise. That is still a challenge.
Yeah,
But
no,
looking
I
at,
agree.
I have the same fortune as you have, where you can peek into multiple clients, where you can validate what is actually going on. So that helps. That helps quite a lot.
Yeah, we there's a lot of myth usually built around the latest and greatest attack, and everybody's moved from this to that. And I don't know if you see the same thing, but we noticed that there's a big difference between highly sophisticated targeted attacks for a company, and that's one set of schemas, and that would be very advanced and could be very modern. But 90% of what you see for the most part is not relatively new. It's not relatively modern. It's the same old stuff that's been around for 10 years and still getting people compromised. So there's although it's really cool to be in the cutting edge of what's going on out there and what TTPs are floating about, there has to be an acknowledgement, at least for managed service providers like you and me, that a lot of our customers are getting attacked by the boring, traditional, everyday stuff. And hence why Sysmon is so relevant, because it gives you eyes into finding all of those things.
No, very true. And it's a shame that still a lot of that old stuff is actually working, because a lot of those things are relatively easy to mitigate once an admin actually knows what to do. And this is something I've been debating for quite a long time, to do write-ups on this, and I still want to do it, but yeah, there's so much other stuff that I'm also working on that I can't get myself the time yet. But this would be a great thing for anyone to do, right? But it should be in an accessible place. And I know that MITRE has the Center of Ingenuity right now, where they also want to do these kind of things. So I hope that at least there will be some output from that, because everybody's looking at them. So it will be a great place to host this.
Now, I agree. MITRE's evolution in itself, moving to cloud, moving to IoT, they're doing a lot of, they're extending their thinking to many dimensions, which is really good, because we need that attacker-led thinking into how are we investing, right? So when we are talking to customers, a lot of the time is the investment benefit, right? If you have £1 to spend, what's the most benefit you can get for that £1 in terms of return? And MITRE facilitates a really good discussion there. So it's not controlled by what marketing tells me or what this framework over here tells me that I need to buy. Is actually what's the attack that is relevant to you, and you design for your attack surface, which is it's a beautiful way of thinking that whose time has come. But as you say, there's still a lot of the basics. It's interesting because for years we've all been evangelizing on the basics, and we're still, it's an ongoing battle, right? It's an effort that will persist forever. So I don't think we're ever going to get rid of it, which is quite disheartening.
Probably not, yeah.
But it's good to see that the vendors are doing a lot to try to make it harder by default, right? So
Yes.
harder to attack by default, and the progress there has been phenomenal.
Yeah, the difference between Windows 7 and Windows 10 in its current state is immense. It's like
Or
worlds
even
apart.
AWS by default to AWS by
Oh
default
yeah,
today, right? So the
yeah,
cloud,
they've
they're
learned
taking
it
it
the hard
really
way.
seriously.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, they
yeah,
have to, of course, because there's so many people pumping millions into that platform. That they expect some stuff. And this is also where Microsoft is struggling, probably, where they still have some security features behind the paywall, but then you need the top tier license. And they started shifting some of them already down, and that probably in the next year I hope we'll see a little bit more of that progress trickling down. And of course, it's a commercial entity, so they also need to fund all that capability building. But yeah, still, it feels a little bit strange to me.
yeah. No, agreed.
Security by
I
default.
always have it's like the single sign-on tax, right? We're still in a world where pretty
Yeah,
much every vendor out there wants to charge you for the privilege of single sign-on, and it's really strange to still accept that tax because you don't have any choice. All of our favorite tools have an enterprise version, and SSO is a feature of enterprise. Even though you're a 10 of 20, 25 people, you still need to pay for enterprise just to get that feature. Feels not fair anymore.
no,
And I hope
no,
we're reacting to that. Listen, I'm conscious that you're about to jump on holidays and you're actually delivering a Black Hat talk while you're on holidays. You want to tell us a bit about that, and then I'll let you go.
Oh, it's actually DEF CON, but that's all
Sorry,
right.
Def.
It's the same week, so it's equally cool. No, I'm actually working together with a friend, Mauricio Velasco. He created a tool called Purple Sharp, which is an adversary simulation tool. And we're working together a little bit on the whole adversary simulation process. So from beginning to end, also the detection part. I integrated his output into my threat hunting app, so there's some correlation to be done and some visuals. And we're talking a little bit about why you should be testing your detections, basically.
Nice.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'd love to see it in action. We use a lot of that thinking internally in the SOC. So everything we deploy through the blue team gets tested by the red team, gets emulated back in through the red team, and that cycle of assurance has served as well to the point I'm surprised that it's not more kind of adopted as a general trend. Are you aiming that for internal use for SOC providers? Are you aiming that as an MSSP? What's your focus of the tool?
So this tool will be open source, so everybody can actually do it. And it's still limited in its functionality, of course, but over time that will grow. But a capability like this should be anywhere, in my opinion. And it's probably in the next couple of years there will be a lot more companies doing it. There's of course a couple of really good commercial products as well. But these are still only being used by the large multinationals or banks or whatsoever, because people still struggle to set up a proper SOC. So you can't expect them to also have this in place already. At the same time, if you have to start now, better do it well and just continuously test. Make sure that your detections are actually still working, or that if something broke, then at least you know within, I don't know, a couple of days, weeks, instead of maybe never.
Never, until it's too late and you wonder why that detection never picked it up again. Yeah, agreed. We've all been there where we've seen that happen to a customer.
Yeah, that hurts. Yeah.
That's an amazing project. Congratulations. I hope we can. Is that being streamed or recorded, or is that going to be
I think
only
it will
live?
be a live stream. It's in the Blue Team Village on Friday the 9th.
All right.
But
We'll be sure to log in.
it's at late, so it's probably at midnight UK time, something around
Okay.
there.
Okay, fair enough. Where are you doing it from then? Where's your holidays? Without disclosing any
I'm going
offices.
to Germany. I'm going to Germany for a week. So either I'm doing it from Germany, or I might be just back in the Netherlands. I have to check. But it's going to be a late call.
Well, look,
but
enjoy the break. It's well deserved, if I've ever heard of it. And congrats again for FalconForce. Hope to meet again soon.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
Take care, mate.
Take care.